All right, good morning, you guys. It is Saturday. It is our second Saturday of the 21 Days of Nutrition presented by Kim's Prescription for Health. And Saturday means special guest Saturday. So last week, our holistic nutritionist Ashlea talked through IBS and IBD, the differences. And so today we're going to switch gears and we're going to talk through food sensitivity and food allergies. So this is a question that she gets a lot when she talks to people or when she's at work. So I thought it would be really great because some of you might have some of the same questions. So I will let her take it away.
Hi guys, how's it going? So today we're going to be little sleuth detectives and figure out the difference of a true case of mistaken identity. So food intolerance and food allergies are often confused for one another, and that's because they do share a bunch of the same symptoms. But a food intolerance is not life-threatening, and a food allergy can most certainly be life-threatening. It doesn't always have to be, but it will definitely be very severe. So we're going to start with the intolerance, which food intolerances don't actually trigger an immune response, though they may feel like it. They really just affect your digestion, and then you can have similar symptoms of cramping, abdominal pain, nausea, vomiting, all of that. But more often than not, it's just a couple of different things that could be the culprit behind it. So for example, a case of intolerance would be a deficiency in an enzyme like lactose intolerant, which means that you just don't have enough of the lactose enzyme, which, fun fact, most of us have the highest amount of lactose in our lives as infants, and over time it slowly decreases, and then we just have more and more trouble digesting it, which most people can't actually digest dairy, but they don't know it because the symptoms range from person to person, so they think they can, but they really can't. IBS is another example of an intolerance, which again is the cramping, abdominal pain, constipation, and diarrhea, or both. And that is just where your body mistakes a food for something else and it have responses. Another one could be caused by chronic stress or psychological factors, which this one is still not incredibly understood, but it plays a huge role with the brain-gut axis, which is really fascinating, but definitely very complicated. And then last but not least, for example, is the celiac disease, which is indeed an allergy, but it won't actually trigger an anaphylactic response or a life-threatening response. It will just cause a bunch of tissue damage in the GI, but for more information, just go back to our previous video for that one. Food intolerances are very common. They affect almost everyone, if not everyone, at one point in their life or another. It's dose dependent or serving size dependent. So for example, you can eat maybe a fourth of a cup of a vegetable, but if you eat a full cup, you'll have a response, and then you can have some abdominal pain, cramping, or anything like that. So it just varies person to person. The causes are still unknown, but again, it could just be something as simple as lacking an enzyme, which can be easily modified with adding digestive enzymes or that specific enzyme itself. Another cause could be just an intolerance to a certain additive. The foods we eat today are loaded with different things that don't necessarily need to be there. For example, dyes or MSG or preservatives to make them last on the shelf. So we're not supposed to digest that stuff, so it makes sense that our bodies are sensitive to it. The diagnosis for intolerance is more of a pain in the butt than anything because it's really just trial and error. There's no actual test that could be done to diagnose an intolerance. So what they recommend is writing a food diary, and then you will track the food and the amount. You'll put the time, the day, and then any response you may have throughout the day, because again, an intolerance reaction can happen between 30 minutes to 72 hours later. So it's kind of challenging. But what you're trying to do is find a common factor between all of the foods that you're eating. So again, it could be just a simple ingredient, or it could be the actual food itself. Then again, some of the symptoms include stomach pain, gas, cramping, bloating, vomiting, heartburn, headaches, and irritability. So huge range, and they're all very similar with other things. So again, it makes it really hard to narrow down. And then the treatment for it is really just avoid the food once you figure out what it is, or minimize the amounts that you consume it in. Digestive enzymes are easily found in stores and can definitely help if you take them before a meal. All right, so we'll move on to allergy. the fun one that everybody loves. So a true food allergy causes an actual immune response and can be very life-threatening. So what happens is that when you consume an ingredient or a specific food, typically a protein, your body confuses it as being harmful, and so sends antibodies specific to that protein to fight it. And an allergic reaction happens when the antibodies are actually battling the protein inside your system. You can have a mild response the first time you eat it, and it can get increasingly worse over your lifetime, so be very careful with that. It affects your organs. And of course, the most common triggers are your top 8 allergens: the shellfish, nuts, fish, eggs, peanuts, and of course dairy. Food allergies affect about 1% of adults and 7% of children. Though some children can outgrow the allergy, which is great, but not always the case. Your primary care physician or gastroenterologist can help determine if you actually have an allergy or intolerance. Personally, I think the gastroenterologist is a bit more knowledgeable in that area and highly recommend finding a good one. So a good example of a food allergy would be when the first time your body is exposed to it, right? It creates the antibodies, also called immunoglobulin E, or IgE for short, which are released whenever you actually eat and digest the food. So IgE antibodies and histamines, which are chemicals released in the body, we all know that with the seasonal allergies, which is so much fun, go into that area and try and remove the food itself, because your body is thinking, hey, there's somebody here that shouldn't be here. So the histamines are the real culprits because they can actually affect your respiratory, GI, skin, and cardiovascular system. And they're the ones that cause the actual external response that you see. So for example, if the histamines are released in your nose or your throat, that's when you're going to see the breathing trouble, the swallowing, and then of course itchiness. Then some of the symptoms to look out for food allergies are going to be, of course, rash, hives, nausea, abdominal pain, cramping, diarrhea, itchy skin, chest pain, and the swelling of the throat and tongue. Definitely don't want to play around with that. And then really the only treatments for that are going to be avoid the food completely for the rest of your life, which can be very challenging because, you know, it could be something as simple as gluten or eggs, and they're in everything. And then, of course, just getting an EpiPen from your doctor, it's a prescription, can help make the transition from where you are at the location that the episode occurred at, or in traveling to the hospital. So that way you don't die in between, which is really bad. So that's mainly what the difference between them are. And again, they're commonly confused with one another, but it's easy to kind of distinguish between the two once you really know what you're looking for.
I thought the dairy part was really interesting because in the Faster Way we do exclude dairy for that reason, because most adults don't even know that they have an intolerance. They've just been eating it for so long, and then my clients will stop, you know, because we encourage it, and I tell them, give it a week or two, just see. And a lot of people are like, oh, I feel so much better, I'm not even going to add it back in. And same thing with the processed food. You said like MSG and the dyes and some of the stuff found in the processed foods, they don't even realize that their body isn't working its best or that it's reacting to it until they remove it, and they're like, holy cow, I feel a bazillion times better now that I've eliminated that. So that's super interesting.
Well, fun fact, my first degree is in archaeology, and there is no actual evidence showing that human adults over the age of puberty have consumed dairy because they couldn't digest it. So they only gave it to children and infants.
And so now we have it all the time. And then the other thing in the Faster Way is gluten. So not everybody is allergic to gluten, because you said that's celiac, that's an allergy, that's a true issue. That's also celiac, that's an anti-inflammatory it's an immune response, the celiac disease, correct?
Yes.
And an allergy. And then some people can just be sensitive to gluten even at smaller doses and not even know it.
So that was recently created as its own category. So you have celiacs, and then you have non-celiac gluten intolerant. So okay. It's actually its own thing now. And research has been coming out more and more showing that you may not actually be intolerant to the gluten in there if you don't have celiacs. it may actually just be a FODMAP that's going on in there.
Well, that was a great transition because that's what we're going to talk about next week is FODMAPs, if you've never even heard that word, and you have some issues with wheat or gluten. It turns out you might just have an issue with FODMAP. So Ash is going to be on next Saturday to talk through what the heck a FODMAP is because I needed the down low on that. And then she'll share a low FODMAP recipe with you guys. And then today we'll have an anti-inflammatory recipe from one of the cookbooks that she likes. So thanks for hopping on today, Ash. You guys let us know. Comment below if you have any questions. Shoot me a message. I'll get it over to her. We'll talk through it and we'll get you an answer. So happy Saturday. I hope you all have a great day and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye, guys. Bye.